GM everyone, and welcome to Smart Contact, an interview series with the world's most influential and impactful Web3 leaders. This podcast is produced by Web3 Harbour and is supported by Circle, our 2024 lead sponsor, and by Invest Hong Kong, co-sponsor of the Smart Contact series at Blocktober. Like and subscribe for more Smart Contacts.
I'm Karena Belin, co-founder of WHub and AngelHub, and I'm your host today. We are recording with a live audience here in Hong Kong, and today's Smart Contact is Nicole Giles, Vice President and Director of Digital Art at Christie's Auction House. Thank you for joining our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm actually super excited to welcome you here today in Hong Kong, Nicole, as part of Blocktober. Many events are going on. Talking about events, last time we met was at the 8th Art and Tech Summit of Christie's in New York.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
We had some really fascinating guests over there, including Steve Wozniak, Vinod Khosla, artists like Afik Ranadol, and Beeple. We talk a little bit about the upcoming Art and Tech Summit very, very soon. But now let's dive directly into the subject today. Would you mind give us a little self-introduction, please?
Of course. I'm Nicole Giles, the Director of Digital Art at Christie's. I've been at Christie's for 12 years, predominantly in the contemporary art division. I started mostly on the business side. I focused on our private sales organization. I oversaw the business side of our online sale division, did some client strategy work. And it was actually in my online sale role where it was the right place and the right time situation where that was when we decided to sell the Beeple Everydays back in March of 2021. And we can dive into all the history about that in a bit, but it was during that sale. So that whole project fell under my purview. And I learned a lot very quickly. And after the insane results from that, we decided to start a digital art department within Christie's. So I ran that and I started that. So it's been about 3.5 years now. We've built Christie's 3.0 in that time period, which is the first on-chain auction platform for a major auction house. So that's been very exciting. So we're focused on that, but we're also focused on integrating blue chip, so to speak, or masterpiece level digital artworks within our traditional contemporary art sales, and really trying to elevate the digital art world into just a subset of the contemporary art market.
Fantastic. Yes, a really impressive background, and you were the right person at the right point in time, right?
Yes, it's definitely happenstance. I won't try to, lie there. I was definitely lucky, but I loved it and I loved learning on the job. So I definitely took the bull by the horns and ran with it, and it's been really exciting building a whole new department and division and strategy within such a storied organization. Christie's is over 250 years old, so it's been challenging at times, but really exciting to build such an entrepreneurial, small growth team within a very, very old company.
Absolutely. And we're going to start really talking about this very special moment in 2021. I think for all us enthusiasts in the Web3 space, it was kind of like funny to see that a very traditional old auction house was needed to make the term NFT go mainstream, right? I think if I recall correctly, NFT became the word of the year of the Collins Dictionary, and all that thanks to, 250-year-old traditional auction house. So tell us a little bit more. What was happening in the lead up to the Beeple sale?
Yeah, sure. So Christie's, we actually sold our first NFT in October 2020. People think the Beeple one was the first, but actually it was October 2020. In our Contemporary Art Day sale, we sold a physical painting by Robert Ellis, and with it came an NFT as a certificate of authenticity. So the actual work was a physical painting by him, and he had been doing a lot of interesting work with Bitcoin, with blockchain. So this was definitely an experiment, and so we did that in our New York day sale in October 2020. Maker's Place who, if you don't know, they're a digital art or an NFT marketplace, exclusively digital art marketplace that had been around for a bit. They had been working with Beeple. They saw that we did that. They reached out to us actually and said, would you be interested in selling just an NFT artwork and just an artwork that's, that minted as an NFT? And we said, sure, what's an NFT? And both myself and my colleague Noah Davis at the time were running our online sale. So I was running all the business side of our online sale division for contemporary art, and he was running the art side of it. And so we said, tell us more. Sure. And they said, we have this artist Beeple. Do you know about him? And so we did some research. We saw that he had some success. He was doing this for quite a while. He wasn't, super new to the scene. He had been doing this for 13 years, as I'll talk about in a second. So he had been doing a project called his Everydays, where every single day he did another artwork. And then it was gaining a lot of traction. And he had done an interesting project in the end of 2020 that gained some traction, something in January as well. So we said, sure, let's try it. And we had a First Open platform. First Open is a branded sale at Christie's that really focuses on emerging contemporary artists. It's where we have a lot of leeway to try new things, put new mediums, put new artists, try them at auctions, see sort of what sticks. So it felt natural that it would obviously, this is an online sale sort of project. In addition to a lot of the collectors and things being inherently digital, it obviously made sense to do this in an online sale. So Noah and I got on the phone with the Maker's Place people. We said, what is this? Tell us more. So we learned very quickly and we said, sure, let's try it. We suggested that it wasn't just one of the everydays. It was a collage or a collection of everything thus far to make sure that it was important enough, so to speak, to be sort of the launch of Christie's first time doing this medium. So they were on board. Beeple was on board. We sort of all worked together. We had no idea what it would sell for. We said, let's put it at $100. We have no idea. Starting bid at $100. So we started the bidding at 100, and in the first 8 minutes, it got to $1 million. And we were looking at each other on the computer, and this is during COVID, so a lot of us are working from home.
So most people were on the computer, right? That
Yes.
certainly helped, I guess.
Yes. It went to $1 million, and we said, oh my God, what do we have on our hands here? So I worked as running the business side of that entailed working with our finance team, and we decided to take cryptocurrency in the middle of the bidding. And
So wait a second. Exactly. So because a lot of other things happen. So at the beginning, did you typically you give a time frame, right? What was the time frame? What were the sale was going to happen for how long?
Yes. So typically our online sales at Christie's run for 2 weeks, which in the crypto world was very, very, very long.
Eternity.
So we learned that quickly, but this was a 14-day sale. So halfway through the bidding, so first of all, it got to $1 million, and it only stopped at $1 million actually, because we have an internal process in place where once you're bidding online past $1 million, you need to be personally credit checked by our finance team. So everyone sort of thought like, oh, it got to $1 million and it stopped. Like it only stopped because there was a Christie's sort of back end halt.
KYC process,
yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, everyone has to be KYC'd to bid, but it was more of a financial reference situation
Understood.
to bid
Okay.
at that high. And then clients started asking us, are you taking crypto for this? And we said, no, but should we? And they're like, yeah, you should. So we said, okay. So I had to figure out how to do that. And I'm fortunate enough that the CEO of Christie's is very supportive of this whole movement of Web3, really believes in the future of Web3. So he was very on board. And he's like, yes, let's figure out how to do this. This is great. Like, I'd love to do this. So I kudos to our executive team. They were very, very supportive and very, really gave a lot of backing, because I think without that, we definitely would not have been able to get this done so quickly.
Gotcha. And that launched a second wave, right, of traction. So,
Yes.
okay, now we're past $1 million. What happens
Yes, then we announced we're taking cryptocurrency. It was all over the news, CoinDesk, Wall Street Journal, everyone sort of reported that Christie's is starting to take cryptocurrency for this. And then the bidding sort of went crazy. The last day, I think it was at 14 million. And then I think there were 30 people bidding above $1 million, for 30 unique clients bidding above $1 million.
Which is quite
which is crazy.
Yes,
which is
exactly.
really high.
Like typically when you get into these spheres at Christie's, how many people bid at that stage?
I mean, typically over $1 million you're getting, I mean, it depends, but if you're looking at the over $1 million mark, it can range anywhere from like 5 to sometimes just 2 people it takes, right, to push something from $1 million to where it lands. So on the last day of bidding, it was at 14 million in the beginning of the day. I think there were maybe 5 or so people still in the game. Then it obviously, sparsed out, and it took 2 people to get from, I think it was something around 30, 40 to all the way up to 69. 2 people bidding against each other. And that was
amazing.
Quite a day
headline,
in the office.
Right? Absolutely. And then I remember I don't remember exactly for how many days, but then the buyer was anonymous, right? I think it was not, and I think it took some time until Metakoven, right, and Tubular came out and said, and then there was the question about who is Metakoven, right? Tell us a little bit more about, did you know who was bidding on the other side?
Yes, we knew. Like I said, we have to KYC everyone. We need financial references. So yes, we definitely knew everyone. They were all, not all, but they were predominantly new clients to Christie's. There were a couple existing collectors who were interested in bidding in the game. Actually, a handful of people who were new to us from the Robert Alice sale in October 2020 were participating in this sale, which of course makes sense. But yeah, Metakoven was the buyer. We knew that. He paid in cryptocurrency, so that was new.
Absolutely.
Trying to take the crypto for that. And yeah, we've met a few times now. He's a great person. He's very, very focused on the stewardship of digital art, how to conserve NFTs, which is a big conversation, and how to make sure his collection is preserved for the future. And he's really interested in working on commissions. Now he's commissioning particular artists to get into this space. He did a really interesting project with Olafur Ellison, which was really interesting that he's announced and he's talked about. He's talked at our Christie's Art and Tech conferences before. Yeah, he's very impressive.
Sorry to interrupt the video, but I want to tell you about our 2024 Smart Contact lead sponsor, Circle.
What is Circle?
At Circle, we're building a digital dollar that brings the power of the internet to money.
Circle's the place where crypto meets stability,
where local businesses meet global customers.
and the US dollar meets USDC.
Meet Circle.
We also want to thank our Smart Contact at Blocktober sponsor, Invest Hong Kong. Thank you to all of our sponsors and community partners. Now back to the conversation.
Amazing. So you can obviously not say who was the other counterpart bidding and who lost at the last mileage, but was that other counterpart also bidding in crypto or was it in fiat?
So all the bidding actually takes place in USD, like the numbers are all bidding, but it's only when you have a buyer do we then determine what currency they want to pay in.
Oh, okay, you don't have to commit upfront. Okay, understood. But the other question is obviously how much did this open up Christie's to a whole new target audience? How many traditional bidders that you had at the beginning, and how much could you actually opening up your target group?
Yeah, we had an influx of new clients. This is a huge, and it still is today, a huge new avenue for younger, more tech-savvy clients to come to Christie's first because they're interested in digital art and NFTs and they want to collect that. And then once they have their first interaction with us through that, they say, oh, this is not so scary. I could be an art collector. I can go buy a watch. I can go buy a print. I can buy a Picasso painting, So we've actually had a lot of clients come to us originally through NFTs and are now starting to think of themselves as multi-category art collectors.
Right, so then you push them up, down, sideways the value chain.
We help them discover new things to collect. I don't think it's not as forceful of a push, but
well, great success for you. But again, I'm obviously really very important for the industry as a whole. Definitely was interesting for us because we held a conference, I think a a month later. And we had Tubadur and Yatsu on a fireside, and then afterwards we had Christie's and Jihan, I think, who's still operating as an advisor, right, to Beeple, and Christie's talking about that sale. And everybody, once of a sudden, knew what an NFT was and why it was so important. Now, internally, that catapulted your department, I guess, from, I don't know, maybe a side department to the center of the stage. What happened then internally after the Beeple sale?
Well, I mean, we didn't exist in this department before the Beeple sale. There was no digital art department. We were, we're part of the contemporary art department, so we're actually not a standalone. We definitely operate within the contemporary art sphere. We still think of ourselves and are viewed internally, and we want to be viewed externally as just another medium within contemporary art. So just like painting, sculpture, photography, what have you. We are part of contemporary art. So we then started a new division. So myself and my colleague Noah Davis, who I mentioned before, we started the department. Noah has since left the company a couple months later. So now I've been running it from all the business side, from the artist relationships, the collector relationships, business development, and then all of the sort of vendor management. So how do we actually do this from a tech side? Like, well, who do we need to help us? So we were very humble in the beginning. We learned a lot really quickly. Everyone was very interested to teach us, which was very great, for us. And it was really fun. And what I loved about it personally was that I finally got to talk to people in other industries. The art world can feel a little closed at times and insular. And there were people who had been working in Web3 from every industry, as you know. I mean, from sports to finance to ticketing to music, you name it. And so they were, we were able to learn from a lot of other industry leaders and see sort of how they were using blockchain technology in their companies.
Amazing. I mean, with blockchain then pushing the agenda even further, you told me that this was then also the birth of Christie's 3.0 as a project. Tell us how this connects.
Yeah.
And what Christie's 3.0 actually is.
Yes. So after the Beeple sale in March 2021, we spent the rest of the year trying things, seeing what stuck, seeing what didn't. The next thing we did actually was work with the Warhol Foundation and did an Andy Warhol sale so Andy had done some work on a computer, on a Commodore computer back in the 80s, and they were never able to be sold, right? I mean, never able to be collected because there's no way to, we can talk about this later, but the whole benefit of blockchain for artists is creating scarcity. If you just create something on Adobe Photoshop or you create something on a computer and you email it to people, everybody has it, right? How do you know who actually has the right?
No, absolutely.
Right. So by putting it on the blockchain and minting it, as I'm sure everyone knows, that's what creates scarcity. So that was the real value in digital art. And that still is the value in digitally made art. So we worked with the Andy Warhol Foundation to mint the works that Andy had made in the 80s on chain. So finally being able to collect this early digital artwork. So that was actually the first thing we did. And it was really interesting because we thought that this whole movement would lead to a lot of traditional art collectors jumping in. And it did lead to some, and it's people are migrating or every day, but the other way around was so much more of a pouring. Like I said before, like people coming to us from the NFT world and then migrating to traditional. So the Andy Warhol thing was a success, but it wasn't as much traditional art world interest as we anticipated, which was interesting. And that led to us talking to a lot of collectors who were new to us and saying, what do you want from Christie's digital team? What are you looking for? Because you're our main collector base, right? We sort of thought, like I said, we would be sort of bringing digital to traditional. And so instead we then did a lot of outreach. And from that, talking to artists and talking to collectors, they all talked about how they want to be transacting on chain.
So you definitely still had these two different camps. So that mixture didn't
Yes.
happen at all. But I think most of people actually missed the fact that, so let's go a little bit. So Beeple now became was it the second most highly
Third.
sold, or third
Third, yep.
most highly living artist, right,
Yes.
of his times. So then you actually went back to, let's say, more traditionally known
Mm-hmm.
artist, Andy Warhol, and tried to bring his digital artwork that already existed on chain.
Yep.
And that's still in an attempt to much more merge the two different groups, like the traditional collectors into the digital realm. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was a wild success. I mean, the work sold for everywhere from, I think the lowest, there were only 5 of them, I think the lowest, and somewhere around 300K all the way up to over $1 million, for some of these iconic works. I mean, one was, the iconic Andy Warhol banana, one was the Campbell soup can. So they were very iconic images. It was very successful, but that was our sort of our foray into a digital, or a traditional artist doing digital. And then we sort of said, okay, now we need to sort of focus on the digital artists, like the natively digital artists. So then we worked with a curator in the space who was able to teach us and show us who some of the really great artists were at the time, working in this new category that we had not met yet. So that was really interesting. And then, so talking to them and learning from them, they were really talking about how they wanted to transact on chain. The artists wanted to sell on chain, the buyers wanted to buy on chain, with all of the transparency benefits, and just really buy the art how it was meant to be purchased, because typically Christie's obviously is not an on-chain, our online sales are not on chain. You click bid, and then we contact you later and say, okay, please
Wire the money
pay,
here.
and then we ship you your art, right? That sort of model is round peg, square hole sort of situation with digital art. So that is what led to us deciding to build Christie 3.0 in order to better serve our clients.
Yeah, and what were the business targets behind it? So again, from an objective point of view, and we'll look a little bit now, a few years into it, if you had to change a little bit the positioning. But so originally, get it from a business point of view, trying to bring maybe the traditional world on chain, acquire new customers. Were there any financial targets set? Did you had a KPI in terms of minimum turnover to achieve, etc.? How?
We did not. This was, we were fortunate enough, like I said, that our CEO and exec team were very supportive of Web3. And this is a growth, it still is a growth category. And we are experimenting a lot and seeing what works. And we have a long-term vision, absolutely, for Web3 art. And we're just trying to be the first mover advantage here, be able to serve our digital art clients better. So Christie 3.0 is definitely targeted towards existing NFT collectors. We do get new clients to Christie's, but I would say most people who transact on Christie's 3.0 have bought or sold an NFT elsewhere before.
Bought and sold an NFT elsewhere,
Yes,
right?
So
Exactly.
They're coming from Super Rare, they're coming from Maker's Place, they're coming from Nifty Gateway, they're coming just from OpenSea.
And what is their expectation? Do you think they get a better price through Christie's, or?
So we aim to be the highest curated marketplace there. We are very, very highly curated. We are not like OpenSea where anyone can just list anything. We have curated sales not that frequently, a handful a year. And we're trying to bring the best of the best digital art to the market. So the same thesis really that we have for any category at Christie's, whether it's handbags, wine, photographs, we bring the best of that category to the market. So the same is true for digital art. And a lot of what we do actually is primary market, which is very different than the rest of Christie's. So most times Christie's are working to sell, for example, a Picasso painting from client A to client B. We are, not always, but for the majority of the time, particularly for Christie's 3.0, we're working with digital artists working today, and we're providing them a service, a way for them to reach their audience in a more elevated way.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look a little bit later into how that actually shifts the market dynamics, right? Because, obviously it positions you as an auction house differently, right? You're not necessarily second, third, or fourth step, so you kind of like become the primary link, right, between creators and buyers. But I wanted to get back a little bit to get, so there was no business objective, let's say, okay, great, 60 million one piece times we're going to sell so many pieces. So there is an important objective. But to the positioning again, given that the speculative element of NFT kind of like came to a halt, I looked a bit on Christie's 3.0, and I see that there is also a lot of charitable activity happening now in this space. Did you a little bit reposition now, or do you still see your role as kind of like market maker of curating premium digital art?
Yeah, we still see our role as curating premium digital art for sure. I think it wasn't a conscious decision to focus on charitable work by any means. I think a lot of digital artists are trying to focus on charitable elements now with the market where it is right now. It's no secret that we're nowhere near where we were in the height of 2021 or even early 2022. So it's a nice way to give back to the community while also releasing for the artists. It's a nice way to give back to charities and the community while still releasing new work at a maybe less risky way, right? Because if you're, a lot of artists say, I'd love to do it in a charity sale, and a lot of it is no reserve. So because most charity sales are no reserve, so sort of give what you want to the charity, and it's an easy way for artists to see what their market could be. So it's sort of maybe like a secondary reason for artists to participate, but it's a nice way, and obviously Christie's, we love to give back to, so it works out.
Yeah, no, fascinating. I'll encourage everybody listening to check some of it out, collaborations with UNICEF or the UN, right? But yeah, so coming back to, the claim, the statement, the objective of selling exceptional digital art. I think a lot of people in the audience are interested. How do you at Christie's define, or in general, what do you think? How do we define what exceptional digital art is, where it seems now everybody with a smartphone can create exceptional digital art? No?
I think it's a great question, and it's not an easy one to answer. What I typically say is we're not academics. We're not curators at heart. We are Christie's. We are an auction house. So our role is to give the market what it wants. I do think with the digital art market being so early, we have an added responsibility of not only just giving the market what it wants in terms of the financial sort of level, but also incorporating artists and works that are doing smart things, using the technology in interesting ways, whether it's blockchain, which we're talking about now, or what we'll get to, AI. So we do have that responsibility. So we do a lot of research, and we have the great benefit of knowing the artists because a lot of them are our consigners. So we're able to talk with them and see what they're working on and really sort of assess, how they're working with this technology. And in terms of how we pick them, typically, they've had to have success elsewhere before they get to Christie. So we're looking for artists who have a market already. Whether it's small is fine, but they have to have a market already. They have to have a community already, because we always say we don't create demand from scratch. So while everyone can create whatever they want on their iPad or on Adobe or on their computer, if you don't have a community already, there's nothing for us to amplify. Even if it's a very loyal, small community and collector base, we need something to amplify. We need something to sort of talk about, some sort of story. So existing market, existing community, and using the technology in interesting and smart ways, I think are the three key things we look for
sourcing the artist, right? Well, go a little bit back in a second about sourcing the artist, but that's obviously very, very helpful. So, and I can see kind of like probably the role that galleries used to play, right, in establishing a certain starting price point. You have other ways, obviously, in the digital space. But again, coming back to your role as a market maker on the one hand side, but also, specialist and kind of like helping your clients, right, to understand what is the potential of value appreciation. What I learned from you, and I think it probably helpful to explain that a bit, is how even before digital art existed in the art world, how is the intrinsic value of an art piece determined, and how do you determine one, regardless all the speculative, which are super speculative elements in the digital art world?
Right. So I think, so I guess two points there. I think first of all, how is art sort of valued generally? Art, full stop. A lot of that applies to the digital art world. So looking at what collections they're already in. So who are the collectors that already own the work? Do they have other great collections in their collection? That's a big part. Criticism, right? Public criticism. So what are the art critics saying? Museum representation, gallery shows. So still looking at those basic or traditional, I would say, maybe not basic, traditional factors is definitely important. But then in the digital art space, you also add community, right? You add their social network, you add what are people saying about them online? You have to sift through a lot, but what are people saying is a big deal. Because a lot of this is about, I wouldn't say speculation, but I would say trends.
Right. And kind of this, in argument, right? If you go back a Picasso or even further down the line, each of these artists, they were kind of like disruptive in their own way. They used different technologies, right? Maybe a different paintbrush, a different paint, etc. But in the digital, what would be kind of like the equivalent to say, look, what Refik Anadol or Beeple are creating is really unique, and it was really like a turning point in the digital art movement that kind of like gives you the confidence to say this will be unique always, regardless on all the speculative, aspects that you have, and obviously reinforced through crypto. But what are some of these elements?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I think digital art has existed since the 1960s. There are galleries like Bitforms based in New York, but they're global representation. They have been working, I think, 25 years. So they're selling art that's made digitally, regardless of the blockchain element. So there are definitely artists, like Harold Cohen or Vera Molnar or, plenty other examples. Matthew Barney, there's plenty of video art, and Namjoon Paik, Anyway, the list goes on with traditional digital art that are in museums, from the Whitney, New Museum, MoMA, everything, Tate. So that's existed for a while. I think the blockchain element, with what I said earlier, with creating scarcity, being able to own work that's actually created on a computer, let's say, to own it, and is the different part of it, and to trade it and to track provenance, that's the new part. That's like the technology that you're saying, why is Refik is doing a lot of AI stuff that's sort of unique, and has gained traction in a lot of institutions, which has been able to further his career and also further the career of other AI generating artists. Beeple also similarly has museum representation. He has a solo show actually opening in Asia next month. And so there's a lot going on with both of the two of them that clearly show that they're going to be around for the long term.
Absolutely. I know if anybody already had the possibility to experience some also of the installation of Refik, it's just it's incredible. And then you understand that's not something that everybody can produce easily on their iPhone. How important is the crusade of the artist within the creation? How much does that really matter? And does it matter even more so because now in the digital art space, obviously you said each artist has their own community. There's much more possibility for artists also to communicate about it. And again, Refik is an amazing example on some of the things that he has created, and his mission and passion on what he's doing with his AI creations.
Yeah, I mean, I think the story of the artist matters for sure, particularly in the digital art space, because they have such a personal relationship with their collectors online. I think Sam Spratt is a really good example. He also spoke at the Christie's Art and Tech Summit last year, remember? He he is actually doing a lot more with the digitally native community, and I think not so much yet with the traditional art world. And I think that's also an interesting topic, is like, do digital artists really need the traditional art world to be successful? I think there's varying, there's a debate about that. I think, so Sam is doing something, very unique in terms of, he has what he calls a council. So he has people who have already sort of bought into his community. They own sort of let's call it an edition of his work, and then can have say in future works. It's very gamified. So he's doing very unique things and ways to reach out to his collectors and create this community that's very invested financially and emotionally with his art. And that's something that only blockchain can provide to artists. So I think the crusade of the artist is very important particularly if you're a digital artist, because you're doing your own marketing from the start. A lot of times galleries are not representing you. Traditional artists, they get signed with the gallery, and it's the gallery's job to promote them, to place them in good collections, to do all of their PR. That's, why artists are giving 50% away to galleries. Digital artists are not giving 50% to anyone. They are, they're using Christie's as a service, but we don't take 50%. And sometimes they're even selling themselves. They're doing it themselves on OpenSea, direct to consumer sales. So they're their own best advocate, and it helps when you have sort of a good story behind you.
Right. And going back to maybe Refik as an example, but in general, of course, we're here for Web3 Harbour. During Blocktober, we talk a lot about Web3 and digital assets, but now AI is the new cool kid on the block. What do you see? How did the most, recent adoption, obviously also of generative AI, really changed the name of the game in the digital art space?
Yes. So like I said before, our digital art team started with blockchain specifically, and it's really expanded to just all art made digitally. So most AI art actually is not on the blockchain. Some of it is. There are some digital artists who are using AI as a tool to make art and then minting it as minting the certificate on the blockchain as an NFT. But many aren't. Many are just using AI as a tool, and I think that's the main difference. I think AI is really just a tool for artists to use to create art that they wouldn't be able to create themselves. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around AI art with saying, but Midjourney or any of these sort of sites where you can just type something in and say, okay, get me this, print me this image. People think that AI is just a way to make art quicker, and that's actually a big misconception. But with the real fine artists that are using AI, they're really just using it as a tool to further what they wouldn't be able to do themselves, and it's adding to their creativity, which I think is a big point. I think NVIDIA and OpenAI, they both have artist residency programs, and they're helping artists create work that they wouldn't be able to do themselves. So Refik, great example. He's had probably the most success in the AI world, but there are a lot of artists who are doing a lot of other really, really interesting, really smart things. Holly Hernan and Matt Durst, they're part of the Whitney Biennial this year. They're using AI. They're also part of Fellowship, which they're actually gallery type model on online sort of representation. They have a lot of AI artists in their consortium.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what was really interesting to hear as well is, so typically in the business world, AI is to create efficiencies and to be faster and quicker and better. And I think in the art, it has a very different role, that what you're alluding to. I don't know if you want to dig a little bit deeper. One of the things that I found fascinating talking to Refik was telling me, it's at that point in time when you can't detach the ego from the data where the magic happens. But I don't know if you want to zoom in and help the listeners understand.
I think great artists and using AI as a tool, obviously Refik, but let's talk about like Sasha Stiles is a great example. Like I said, Holly Hernan. So there are artists who are doing things that push their envelope more. I think a misconception with traditional collectors about their apprehension to collect or to invest in AI art is that, anyone can just do that. First of all, that's what a lot of people say about a lot of artists. So I think that's sort of something across the board, particularly
We all heard
contemporary artists.
about that Picasso my 5-year-old daughter can do as well.
Yeah, or like a Fontana, right? You know,
right,
I could take a knife to a canvas, right? So I think there are a lot of, I think that argument doesn't hold at all, but other arguments with saying, okay, I don't understand the artist agency with AI. What are the decisions that the artist is making when they're using AI? And I think that's something that people have a hard time getting past from a traditional collector perspective in terms of collecting AI. And I think it's all about education, and the artist has a lot of agency, right? I mean, I think it's not just typing in like a one-word prompt saying, okay, you know, give me an image of a cat with a hat on. Like, okay, this is my art that I created. It takes like several iterations to get something that you actually think is interesting and is projecting what you want. I think someone gave this example to me earlier, or it's an artist was giving a talk, and he had this analogy that it's about cooking, right? The chef is not creating the ingredients, right? They're not like creating the spice. They're not creating the chicken. They're putting it all together, and then they're the great chef, and you're like, oh, this food is amazing. Oh my gosh. 3 Michelin stars. Fantastic.
Nobody's bothering that they didn't invent the chicken.
And they're not saying, oh, you didn't create the meal. So it's that was the first time I heard that analogy, and I loved it, so I'm stealing it. But it's great. And I think something that's interesting that Sasha Stiles is working on that's great is she talks about herself as collaborating with her AI. So the AI engine that she's trained is actually trained exclusively on her prior work. So she's a poet. So she trains the AI, her AI engine. She calls it her AI alter ego. She trains it on all of her past poetry. And then she has a dialogue with all of her past work to further her creativity in something that she wouldn't be able to do herself. And I think she said before, and she's speaking tomorrow at the summit, she said before that she settles on a poem when it sounds like something she would say, because it's trained on herself. But if it doesn't sound like something she would say, she nixes it. So I think that's an interesting angle with AI being a tool for artists.
On the other hand, you do have a few of these artists that are really, they're proclaiming the fact that now it's the moment to disrupt the very traditional art scene that's so opaque, that is so difficult to get into. And I think you actually supported Diana Sinclair, right? A young, very amazing young artist in that space who kind of like states that this is one of her objectives, right? To disrupt and to say AI is now a possibility for me, even as a teenager, to be part of the game. Is that something that you struggle with to get the message across about this is yet something unique?
You mean in terms of AI?
In terms of AI, yeah,
generally?
exactly.
Yeah.
So you would have to, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're focusing on in terms of AI art, in terms of AI art, is artists using it in their practice and promoting that as like a new technology and really relevant to today. And that's why collectors should be focusing on this. And, it's really emblematic of the era. And like, it would be very advantageous for your collection to collect something so early when this is going to be around, right? So I think that's what we're focusing on in terms of AI in the art world. There are obviously other ways that AI will create efficiencies within the actual day-to-day and the business side of the art world, which I think like every company, Christie's is focusing on, just general efficiencies within the workforce. Yep. So I think that's also interesting.
Absolutely. We'll get to that in a second. Just one last point on AI in particular, but I guess it also still applies to NFTs. What is Christie's doing to try to increase the adoption of digital art to overcome that trust issue that a lot of particularly traditional collectors still have?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of issues in terms of getting over that hump, I think, with mass adoption and a broader collector base for NFTs, digital art specifically. And obviously, as you said, trust is a big one. Trust is a big one. The perception of the NFT market after the crash. I mean, how many headlines did you see about NFTs are dead, 99% are worthless? Like, and that's not totally untrue. I mean, a lot of that was about the collections, the collectibles, which I do want to make a slight make a difference between for this. There's, obviously the CryptoPunk market is great. I think that's a historical collectible, but there were, 99% of the collectibles and those PFP projects that launched in 2021 are no longer around. So I think that's not totally wrong to say, but it had an adverse effect on the fine art market within digital art. So what Christie's is focusing on mostly are the high end, or the artists that are creating great work digitally as a unique work, and the best of the best collections. So that would include CryptoPunks, the Larva Labs CryptoPunks, Tyler Hobbs Fidenzas, Dmitry Cherniak Ringers, collections like that have withstood the test of time from a artistic perspective. I mean, what
I was going to ask, where do you draw the line? Okay,
right.
The artistic,
what Tyler and Dmitry did with those two collections were unique. They were aesthetically pleasing. It sort of had everything, right? It had the generative art element, not AI. It was generative art, they also ended up in great collections. So it's all sort of shook out, right? They're in LACMA now. There are CryptoPunks in Pompidou. I mean, the list goes on, right? I mean, I think so, though that's what we focus on the collection side. But on the one of one side, that is still alive and kicking. Artists are still using digital tools to create art. It's just not financially where it was in 2021. And I think that's actually okay and much healthier. We're going to have a healthy growth from now until, the next 5-10 years. I see a very healthy growth in that category, and much less speculative. And you have the gamblers are sort of out, and the people who are sticking around are doing really smart, interesting things.
And again, you see your role as Christie's on helping to really.
Yes. Yeah. So we're, we really focus on how we can elevate this category from a perception point of view and tackle that trust issue by holding art and tech summits. So that's one way. I mean, we bring together leaders in the art world, traditional art world, leaders in the blockchain world, and the tech world, and the VC world, to really talk about where this is going and talk about how serious and professional this is. And it's not, the perception that people might have had in early 2021. In addition to that, so we do have Christie's 3.0, which we've talked about, but we really focus on putting great digital artworks within our traditional post-war and contemporary, or 20th and 21st century art sales. So we have a Beeple sale a Beeple work next to a Basquiat, next to a Picasso, right? So it's really elevating these artists in that category.
Which is a very nice segue to Christie's as a business, right? And maybe looking into how you define your role, do you see other established auction houses or newcomers? I think we in the venture space see every other month a company who's going to say, I'm here to disrupt the Christie's of the world. Do you see you're playing quite a unique role, or how is the industry coming along?
So we have a ventures team that we launched in summer 2022. We've invested in over 10 companies now. So we see a lot of and it actually started also after the Beeple sale, because everyone kept coming to us and saying, we're doing this. Like, you can use our product. And we were like inundated, and we were hearing so much from founders, and we had a front row seat to what people were building. And so we sort of got the idea that maybe we should have a venture arm that helped these companies. So it's not just blockchain and Web3 focused. We do focus on financial innovation in the art world, as well as hardware in the art world, and then AI as well. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of founders come to us and saying, we're going to disrupt Christie's. We're going to disrupt the traditional art world. And, we say, great. I mean, we're a 250-year-old company. There's been disruptions, throughout, and we've survived. And I think we adapt with the market. So I think it's better for us if we can invest in some of these companies that we believe in and help them get to the next stage. And then, we're a part of that, and we can adapt.
Yeah, so you mentioned already adopting blockchain for you as a business with the launch of Christie's 3.0. Are you using blockchain technology to kind of like really now capture the authentication process or provenance into that to maybe ease the process in the future, or is that still
I think so
not yet implemented?
It's interesting. I mean, if you asked me in 2018, like how is the art world going to adopt blockchain, I would have said, provenance. Like that's the first thing, not NFTs, not art on blockchain. And we haven't even talked about ordinals on Bitcoin, but that's like a whole separate thing. But the demand hasn't really been there from the buyer side, which we've done a few experiments. We worked with Trevor Traina's company, Christie, about a couple weeks ago, actually, with our photography. We sold his photography collection, and all of those works were minted on the blockchain as certificates of authenticity or certificates of ownership, that we gave to buyers, which was a great test. We actually, the first time we did this was in 2018, well before the NFT boom. With our Ebsworth collection, we worked with a company called Artery, and similarly, they put all the works in that sale on the blockchain as certificates of ownership to sort of track provenance and to mark the collection as secure and transparent. But I mean, it's great, and I think it has value, but until buyers are coming to us and saying, I'm not going to bid on, that Andy Warhol painting until it comes with a certificate of authenticity, Christie's is not, just being open, Christie's is not going to be the one to, initiate that. Where I think the demand should come from and the catalyst should come from is the art insurance companies. If I were an art insurer, I would say, to a collector, I'm not going to insure your work at whatever price unless you have the digital certificate of authenticity, because that's secure, it's immutable, you're not going to lose that, you're not going to be searching around in 20 years when you want to sell that and saying, where's that invoice from that gallery that I paid however many millions of dollars for that, so that's where I think the catalyst and the sort of push should come from, and we'll see.
That's where we can clearly see the value. I mean, again, more provocatively back to you, with the Christie's example, right? What applies to, obviously, the insurance companies could apply to any other buyer as well. And the question is, are you not shoveling your own grave of being able to find the authentication or the provenance thanks to blockchain technology? I don't have to rely on a Christie specialist anymore.
So I think Christie specialists are not going to be replaced yet by blockchain provenance. I think so Christie's is not an authenticating body. Like, we still go to the Andy Warhol estate to make sure that this is a real Andy Warhol that a client wants to sell with us. But what Christie's provides is taste. And I think there's always going to be tastemakers, right? There's always going to be someone that says, this is good quality. This is worth whatever price you should pay for it. And blockchain can't do that. But blockchain can show you past data, can show you past sale data, right? If everything ever was on the blockchain, you could always, I guess, in theory, look up every single Andy Warhol sale that was sold. Let's say this is in 30 years from now, right? Like, you can look up anything, any Andy Warhol that was sold, what prices, but you don't know, right? You're still going to rely, I think, on a specialist who knows the art market and who knows, what's good art, what's an A+ example of a Warhol, what's a B+ example of a Warhol, and what you should pay for that.
Yeah, and on that role, though, understand from a blockchain point of view, but now throwing AI into the game as well, right? That kind of like market maker type of role, or understanding where valuations can go. Is that something that, AI is going to bring to the table? Are you worried about too much market transparency, which typically, again, is not the best place for any intermediary in the market?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't think we're worried. I'm not worried. Maybe there are people in Christie's worried. I'm not. I think there's, like I said, there's always going to be a need for conversation and for human interaction, especially in art. Nothing can replace looking in front of a painting and seeing how you feel about the painting, and that's why people buy art. And I don't think that's too dissimilar from talking to a person who knows about art and who can talk to you about it and the emotional value that you feel about it. And you should always, I always tell collectors, you should buy what you like. Obviously, there are people buy for financial investment as well. And I think blockchain and AI will help with the financial investment end of the art market. But I think, like I said, nothing's going to replace just coming to an auction house and looking at all the art and seeing what resonates with you.
Right. And that's certainly a good reminder, right? That art collecting is not only an investment decision, but very often a consumption decision, right? Now, on the other hand, like watching over not being totally disrupted, two additional opportunities. How much do you internally talk about maybe the market becoming bigger because tokenization of real world assets, something really very vividly discussed here in Hong Kong, where we hope we will have a leading role in providing a regulatory framework. Do you discuss about opportunities of what fractionalization could bring to the market, or tokenization in terms of helping business models such as museums, etc.? I mean, I guess the list is endless, but do you talk this, and in which kind of like direction are you talking this internally?
Yeah, I think so. From our ventures team, like I said, we talked to a lot of founders who are doing a lot of interesting things, and a lot of them are focusing on this topic. I think Christie's, we're not really sure. I mean, being totally transparent, we're not really sure what Christie's play is there yet. I think in terms of the fractionalization of art, we have looked at a couple of companies there. We haven't invested quite yet. I think there's something interesting happening there, whether it's fractionalization on the blockchain or not. I think there's other companies doing interesting things on both sides. So I think we'll see where that goes. I think there are companies doing some sort of fractionalization with luxury goods as well, not just art, but other luxury assets, which is interesting. Tokenization of real world assets, I think, is huge, and that's great to hear that Hong Kong is leading the charge there. I think I think we'll see where that goes. I think the trust elements are still needed before getting some mass adoption there, like that we talked about. The perception of trust in the digital age is a big topic. So yeah, I think 5-10 years from now will be really interesting, but I'm not sure how we're going to be doing that in the art world quite yet. I mean, what are you seeing if Hong Kong is really focusing on that? I mean, from a regulatory perspective that you mentioned, I think it's very different in New York and Hong Kong.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the things where definitely here we have a real commitment on providing regulatory clarity, because we see huge opportunities, not only in the art world, of course, also looking into other types of real world assets that you can digitize. I think what the hope, obviously, is the underlying hope that this creates additional demand or additional liquidity. That's also when we come across here of companies that are trying to, once again, maybe disrupt some of the traditional auction houses by saying, okay, we will make it possible now for Gen Z to start owning maybe a fraction of a Picasso and become part of that maybe investment game of what art can be as well, of art collections. So this is definitely something that is eyed with a lot of interest and opportunities. The critics, of course, would say this is all false hope, well, I guess need to look into the crystal ball, or just wait and be a little bit more patient to see it in action.
When you mentioned Gen Z, I mean, I think something I didn't mention, I mean, there's a huge wealth transfer happening in the next few years. And I think in terms of widening the market, a lot of these, people in Gen Z community, they're very interested in digital art. Whether it's blockchain or not, but I think they're used to that aesthetic. So I think something else from, older collectors, they're just not into that aesthetic, in terms of standing in front of something and buying something that you like and want to keep in your home. They always ask me, how do I put this up in my living room? I don't want this just on my phone. Like, what do I do? And I think we do have a long way to go in terms of like great screens. I think LG is doing some great things. Samsung is doing some great things. But I think in order to have that at a reasonable price, and they're quite expensive still, and they've come a long way, but they're still expensive in order to have all these screens in your home. And is that the aesthetic you really want? A bunch of screens in your living room, in your hallway? So I think that's something that maybe the Gen X collectors find a little disruptive when they're collecting art. But I think when Gen Z is, inheriting a lot of wealth soon, they are very, very open and have seen no problem having, 20 screens in their home with 20 different works of art. So I think that's also going to be a big turning point in terms of the market widening.
Well, that's a very nice bridge into probably the last topic, which is a bit more of the future, and maybe still with we talked about blockchain technology potentially disrupting or enabling Christie's as a business on the AI technology. What do you currently already use? I think there are ways to interact with art pieces, also historical art pieces, right? That Christie's provides now before an auction. What else are you seeing? And are you envisioning digital museums, digital basically pre-sales viewing, or what are you internally discussing?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, just like any business, Christie's is looking into how AI, can help. I think there are companies, there are outside companies that are working on sort of like pricing models with AI for art. There are companies working on digital museums. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. I think we're looking into all of it and seeing how it can help us. Can you
assure me as a collector, I would not be put in contact with a chatbot at Christie's at no given point in time? Okay.
I mean, maybe it'll be something as an additional option, but no, you're not gonna, they're not gonna be a bunch of chatbot specialists typing away to our collectors.
Great. We're actually running out of time. But yeah, I think obviously we always love to ask the crystal ball questions to our guests in terms of what do you see where the industry is heading, let's say, not take too much of a time horizon, but next 2 to 5 years. What is going to be one of the big things that will be impacting the art market in general and maybe the auction market in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't just say AI, but I know it's kind of a boring answer, but it's real. And I think particularly in a tool that's helping artists, I think it will start. I think right now people are starting to differentiate between AI art and non-AI art, and I think that will sort of disintegrate. I think a lot of artists, whether their end goal, their end piece is a painting and with oil paint, or a photograph, or on a digital medium, I think AI is going to help all of them with their process. So I think Pace is actually doing cool things where they are helping their existing artists use digital technology in their existing processes. So it doesn't necessarily have to be the end goal is digital or the end goal is like made with AI, but maybe it's something where, artists are doing sort of their prep work, or they're doing their, pre-canvases and doing their compositions, or where should it go, and they're using AI in that regard. So there's a sort of a wide range of use for AI in artists. So I think that's really gonna be a difference. And I really do think that digital art is going to become more of just ingrained in the contemporary art world. You go to a fair. I just came from the Istanbul Contemporary Art Fair, and there were 3 different booths that had digital art within their booths, and it wasn't just something where the NFTs are in the side, in the back of the corner. Like, this is, they had paintings, they had light boxes, they had digital art, they had everything. So it's just another medium, and I'm really excited for when we get to that point. And honestly, I think my job won't be necessary. Like, we won't have a separate digital art department at Christie's. It'll just be contemporary art, and we'll just merge all together. And I very much looking forward to that day.
Well, that's super exciting. And I do acknowledge it was a little bit unfair to ask you this question and to answer it in 2 minutes, because there's an entire summit dedicated right, tomorrow. So we're really thrilled to have Christie's Art and Tech Summit back here in Hong Kong for the second time. Actually, the first one I remember, we already had the beautiful chance to collaborate with you guys, with WHub, and it was in 2019. And I totally remember having a panel. Yatsu was one of the panelists talking about NFTs. That was 2019. And I think probably we lost half of the room after 5 minutes, even though Yat did a fantastic job, as he always does, on explaining what digital ownership and property rights actually entail and the potential of it. But why don't we use the last 1-2 minutes to just tease a bit about tomorrow. So the 9th Art and Tech Summit, the second one here in Hong Kong, it will exactly explore the question about the digital art market and its future, AI in real life, financial innovations. We're going to talk about trust and tokenization of real world assets there. What else should people expect? Why should people come and join?
Yeah, I mean, it's our 9th summit, as you said. It's really exciting. We bring together the best leaders in the art field, in the tech field, in AI, in VC. So we have a really exciting lineup tomorrow. So yeah, there are a few panels on AI, a few on the digital art market, and a few, like you said, on financialization or the financial innovation. And yeah, people can expect never before heard sort of conversations amongst leaders in different industries. I think that's something that's really unique to our summits. We bring... So it's not like, just financial people talking to each other about what the future is. It's a financial person. It's an artist. It's a VC. So it's really talking and hearing multiple perspectives about a topic. And, we hope that people then mingle and there are business opportunities that come from that. There's a big networking part of this as well. There are a lot of startups that have come to us and say, oh, I met my co-founder at the Art and Tech Summit like 3 years ago. And so we do have a cocktail party after that everyone can stay for, exactly for this reason. So I think that's really exciting for us. And Christie's is we really want to be, and we have been now for, this is the 9th one, the place where these conversations happen and innovation happens for the art world.
Yeah, no, really fascinating. I can only recommend anybody to join. If you cannot join the 9th one, then the 10th or the 11th, because you guys really create a community. I think one of the inspiring pieces is like people that are sitting on stage or in the audience could swap very easily. So very engaged audience. The network effect definitely is there. What I really love is that you guys are going around the world. So there's always one in New York, but there's one in London and then in Dubai and then in Hong Kong. So I think you also bring the global world together. Hats down.
Yeah, thank you
for that. Absolutely.
And we're looking forward to having you tomorrow too.
Absolutely. I'm not going to miss it for anything in the world. Nicole, it was such a great pleasure. Unfortunately, the time is up. I hope that we'll continue the conversation tomorrow at the summit and that the audience will reach out to you. I would like to say, as a podcast host, thank you for tuning into Web3 Harbour Smart Contact at Blocktober series, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.